I was a tomboy, I guess you can say, growing up in the 80s without the cell phone, internet, and all that. So I was one of those 11 p.m. commercials, do you know where your kids are? But my brother passed away when I was 11. I didn't know how to grieve. My parents just lost their child, so I was left alone. So my eating got worse. I just used eating as a comfort. I never dealt with it. I just eat my feelings, if you will. I thought just calling myself vegan, I would drop the weight automatically just by having that tag. Yeah, I didn't know I had digestive issues until I no longer had digestive issues. I thought just reading a novel on the toilet was normal. For the amount of sugar I ate and how overweight I was, I would not be surprised if I had prediabetes or if I was close to prediabetes.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome. We have with us today Nicole, who is going to share, I believe, a success story with us. Nicole, how are you doing this morning?
Good. How are you? I'm excited to be here and chat with you. I've been following you for quite some time now.
Okay, where are you located, just out of curiosity?
I'm a Jersey girl, now living in Northern Virginia, about 20 miles outside of DC.
Okay, very nice. It's good to have you here. So I guess I know it looks like you've been chatting a little bit with the folks, but let's just go ahead and get started. And maybe if you just share a little bit about your background, where you started, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a long, convoluted story, so I'll try to make it short and sweet. I was an athlete growing up. I ran track, played basketball, softball, did all the things, football with the boys. I was a tomboy, I guess you can say, growing up in the 80s without the cell phone, internet, and all that. So I was one of those 11 p.m. commercials, do you know where your kids are? But my brother passed away when I was 11. And I've always had a sweet tooth, but of course, I was 11. I didn't know how to grieve. I've never experienced trauma to that magnitude. My parents just lost their child, so I was left alone. So my eating got worse. I just used eating as a comfort. I never dealt with it. I just ate my feelings, if you will. Then fast forward to 2001, about when I was 21, I joined the Air Force. So I spent 14 years in the Air Force. And my last year, I got out in 2016. My last year, I failed my first PT test, which for the Air Force, it's a mile and a half run, push-ups, sit-ups, and then they tape your waist. So I was a military cop, so I was able to outwork a bad diet, but it started catching up to me to where I busted tape. At that time, women couldn't be more than 35 inches in the waist. If I remember correctly, I was about 38 inches. And if you bust tape, they weigh you. So I'm 5 feet short. And at that time, I was about 173 or 8 pounds. So I got out with a failed PT test, honorable discharge, all that good stuff. But I continued to gain weight at a more rapid rate because I didn't have anyone tell me to run. I didn't have anyone tell me to get up. I wasn't a cop. I just got lazy and continued my bad habits. So in 2017, I saw the documentary, What the Health? This was about a year after I got out of the military and I was desperate to lose weight. So I went vegan. So I was vegan for 4 years. When the thing happened in 2020, I was furloughed from my federal government job. So I just doubled down and just restricted my intake, worked out like a mad woman, and I ended up dropping about 50 pounds. I did get certified in nutrition at this time to help me lose my weight. So I am educated in nutrition, but it wasn't until about 2021, where I stopped being vegan and I switched to low carb at the beginning of this year. And I've lost since about another 15, 20 pounds. So in total, I would say I lost about 65, 70 pounds so far, and I have about 15 more to go. But I did have sleep apnea, high blood pressure, digestive issues, chronic inflammation, anxiety, depression, all of those things because I was obese.
Okay. Let's say quite a bit. And first of all, my condolences about your brother so many years ago. And I don't think anybody really knows how to grieve. It's not something that hopefully none of us have a lot of practice with. Hopefully you won't get good at grieving, but it's just because it's always such a tragic thing. And yeah, I very well remember those Air Force physical fitness tests, the PFTs, because I took my share of those as well. I always was fortunately able to pass all of those. But so interesting, you had this sort of experience with going vegan at a point. What prompted you to do that? Was that just because you thought it was ways I was going to get healthy, or was there some other save the planet, save the animals type of thing? What was the rationale for deciding to go down that route for a while?
Yeah, so of course that's what's promoted, to be healthy, eat all of the plants, heavily plant-based. So there was an aspect of, I thought this was healthy, and just the word vegan, I thought I would automatically lose the weight. But yeah, it was just their portrayal of animals. So it was more so ethical. So I watched that documentary. I remember it was an evening after dinner. And as soon as I watched that documentary, I told my husband, I'm giving up meat. And I literally did not eat meat for 4 years after that. But yeah, it was ethical. And I was desperate to lose the weight. I was desperate to not have to sleep with the CPAP machine. I was desperate to I've never been this heavy at almost 200 pounds at 5 feet. That's a lot of extra weight. I was super uncomfortable. So yeah, it was more desperation, ethical, and What the Health just did a really good job on their propaganda, and they got me.
Yeah, they got a few people. Yeah, I guess I'm glad that you figured it out and have found something that maybe is more helpful for you. And like I said, I can't fault people for trying. And there is a lot of just propaganda out there, and whether it works for some or not, it certainly didn't work for you. Doesn't sound like because you said you weren't literally, maybe you didn't lose weight, maybe you did. There's a lot of ways to do a vegan diet, which some are healthier than others for sure. Were you trying to do a whole food vegan diet, or were you just eating like Oreo cookies and Coca-Cola? What did it look like to you?
At first, I thought just calling myself vegan, I would drop the weight automatically just by having that tag. But yeah, I did eat Oreos, not a lot, but I did eat Oreos because they are vegan. Dark chocolate peanut chews I found are vegan. I was just looking for all the shortcuts because, again, I had a sweet tooth. At the time, I didn't realize it then, but I did have binge eating tendencies. I didn't have an off switch, and I had a mild form of addiction where I just needed those foods. So I found ways they do it the vegan way. But I would say the last maybe year or two, I started doing more whole foods. So I guess my favorite final meals on vegan before I switched to low carb was refried black beans, jasmine rice, sweet corn, again, sweet, pineapple salsa, and then avocado. I would eat that almost every single day. So that was pretty much my go-to, what I thought was at the time the whole food vegan meal.
Honestly, it sounds like a reasonable vegan meal that would probably a lot of people would say is fine. It's not Oreos for sure. And when you did the last year where you said, I'm eating more whole foods and the stuff you just described, did you start losing weight at that point?
I did. It wasn't a lot, but I did notice that I had digestive issues I didn't know I had until I no longer had them. But yeah, I noticed I did start to lose weight, but it wasn't fast enough. I still wasn't feeling good. I would lose maybe a little bit of weight, but I would still feel like crap, and I couldn't figure out why. And that was the cycle I was on for the entire 4 years, no matter what route of vegan I went, whether it was Oreos every now and then or the refried black bean meal. I still couldn't figure out why I was still feeling like crap, essentially eating what was supposed to be the ideal diet. So I lost some weight, but I didn't take care of all the physical issues I was experiencing.
Yeah, even though you were starting to lose weight, you just felt so bad that you weren't going to be willing to continue it any further. Because the critics would say, "Why did you just should have kept eating the whole food vegan diet and kept going?" But you were feeling too bad. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, just I know you're a surgeon, so you'll probably know this procedure. I had the Fulkerson procedure on my right knee. So like major reconstructive surgery. So because of that, I have arthritis, bursitis, tendonitis, all the itises in my one knee. So I was in a lot of discomfort and pain. I was constantly bloated. And then my mental health with the depression and anxiety. So while I was losing a little bit of weight, nothing else was fixing itself besides the weight.
For some people, Fulkerson is an osteotomy where they basically just, crack your bone and realign it. And it's a pretty extensive surgery, quite honestly. But probably, did they tell you they were going to do this in lieu of, because you're young and they don't want to do a joint replacement or something along those lines, probably?
Yeah, I was close on needing a partial knee replacement. And they told me I would eventually need a knee replacement when I get older. I'll have to live with the pain or discomfort. Essentially, there's nothing they can do. But I'm here to say I could go up and down the stairs now, and I can kneel. I wasn't able to kneel, stand for long periods of time, sit without stiffness or discomfort. So I proved them wrong. But yeah, at the time, I thought this was something I had to live with. And that was part of the chronic inflammation I always tell people I suffered from, because it was very uncomfortable to where I would stand up, especially in the military on active duty. Commander's calls and you have to stand at attention for long periods of time. It would be super uncomfortable standing at attention for as long as we had to stand at attention, where my knee would lock. And I thought that was something I had to deal with the rest of my life. But yeah, it was not very comfortable.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's usually a lot of people with a lot of chronic kneecap pain under the kneecap and stuff like that. So we just move that kneecap over and break the bone, break the tib of tubercle and move it across. And it's something I think in my career, I think I was involved in maybe one or two of those, but it was just something that was not a common procedure that you'd want to have done, certainly. But how does your knee feel these? I'm just curious, out of how successful was that surgery for you, and has changing your diet now to I guess I'm assuming a more carnivore-based diet, has that impacted that in any way?
Yes, I did have to have the 3 screws in the front removed surgically because they were protruding from the skin. And I did have discomfort still from all the itises I've developed since then. So yeah, before switching to low carb, so I had the initial surgery in 2008, and then the second surgery to remove the front, some of the hardware in 2009. So since then, I've lost strength in my knee. I wouldn't be able to sit, stand, or even kneel. I couldn't kneel on my right knee because of the bursitis. It was just very constantly inflamed. You can physically see it visibly. But since switching to low carb, I've switched to low carb about the beginning of this year in 2023. So it's been about several months. And again, I never thought I would be able to feel normal because the doctor said it is what it is. And when I get older, I'll need a knee replacement. Since switching to low carb, I was not expecting it to heal. And honestly, the weight and cognitive was not the reason I switched to low carb. It was my knee because it was just that uncomfortable. I wanted to lift weights and function like a normal human being. So about 30 days after switching low carb, I actually did a strength test. So I did a single leg press with both legs to test the differences. With my left, I was above 65 pounds. And with my right, I was about 40 pounds with a little bit of discomfort. And then about 60 days after switching low carb, I decided to test it again. With my right knee, I started at about 40 pounds. With my right knee, I then, after 60 days, just 60 days, I was up to about 60, 65 pounds with no pain, no discomfort. I can go up and down the stairs now. I'm running up and down the stairs. I have no limitations whatsoever. And that happened about 60 days after switching to low carb.
That's awesome. That's wonderful to hear. And when you say low carb, what are you eating? What are you eating these days?
Yeah, I say low carb just because if I eat berries and call myself a carnivore, people get upset with me. So I just say low carb, but okay. I'm about 20 grams or less. So I pretty much stick with triple B and E. So beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Mm-hmm. My carb sources come from berries, mostly blueberries and strawberries. I do have an avocado every once in a while. I just introduced cashews within the last month. I'll have a handful every once in a while. They don't bother me, but yeah, that's the extent of my carb intake and pretty much what I stick to. But primarily, I'm just triple B and E for the most part, and I'm OMAD. So I'm about to down four hamburger patties, chuck in the brisket blend. Probably after we finish up here, I'm going to down four hamburger patties.
That sounds delicious. And after we finish here, I've got a 2-pound ribeye to eat. So, we're on the same page with regard to that. As far as, because you said, well, I don't want to call myself carnivore because I'm having a couple of berries. And I think that's fair enough. And you can call yourself a low carb. And it's certainly easier to explain to people. I'm on a low carb diet. No one looks at the other way. But the vast majority of your calories are coming from, you mentioned, animal products, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Probably most of that beef, it sounds like. When you made the decision to either exclude or include the berries and whatnot, or the avocado and now the cashew, was that done for any particular reason, or is this, I like those things, I want to try them, or were you like trying to, I don't know if you ever went like fully strictly without any of those things. Was there a particular reason why you did that?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. Yeah, I never intended to be zero forever. I just wanted to just get everything out of my diet just to rectify my inflammation, specifically in my knee and hips from my knee. I had a lot of misalignment from all of that. So I just wanted to rectify just all of my issues I was experiencing. So I did go zero. I did eliminate everything and just stuck with triple B and E because that was the easiest way to go about it, I found. And I do like berries. I do enjoy, I don't think I could eat without any carb for the rest of my life. Now that may change, but I just slowly introduced things just to see how my body responded. I started with pineapple and that wasn't a good experience. So I'm like, berries are safe. They're low in sugar as far as sugar goes and fruit goes. So those are fine for me, but I do enjoy them. And I like the freshness because the meat is so heavy. It just breaks up the heaviness and the savory of all the beef and the meat. For me, it just makes it more palatable and more sustainable. But I likely won't reintroduce things back. Maybe I'll go zero at some point, but the minimal carbs I'm eating now just helps me with my palate and just breaking up the heaviness and the savory of the meat a little bit with the freshness.
Yeah, fair enough. And just when you said you tried to reintroduce pineapple and that was a no-go for you, was it, what was the problem with that? Gut issues or was it pain or what? Yeah,
it was definitely gut. I felt borderline nauseous after eating pineapple. So I noticed if I introduce things that are higher on fructose or just higher in sugar, that the stuff I used to eat before, it really does tear up my stomach now.
How has your weight been since you've done this? Did you drop additional weight from where you were when you went to the whole food vegan sort of thing?
Yeah, so I gained during my vegan stint towards the end when I went to whole food, like the last year or two, I lost a little bit of weight, but I actually ended up gaining about 20 more pounds on the vegan diet because I was about 200 pounds at my heaviest. Since switching to low carb at November of 2022, I was down 50 pounds. And since I started low carb at the beginning of this year, I've lost an additional about 15, 20. So I have about maybe 15-ish more to go. I actually just recently, September 4th, eliminated dairy. So no cheese, no nothing, because it was causing phlegm and sinus issues and puffiness in my face. And since I eliminated dairy, I'm back to losing weight again. I was at a bit of a stall and I gained a little bit of weight in the beginning because I wasn't used to eating that much meat. And I guess my body was loving the amount of fat I was giving it. So I just ate too much. So I was at a stall there for a little bit. But since the last 30 days or so, I think I'm back to losing consistently. So I'm hoping by the end of this year, I'll be at my goal.
Okay. So it sounds like you've already dropped from your peak weight something like 70 pounds, which is
about 70 pounds total so far. Yeah. I had about 85 to lose total.
That's great. Outside of the weight loss and the knee pain that has improved, have you noticed any other sort of just any other, by the way, benefits, gut health, skin health, mental health, any of those types of things have improved?
Yeah, so I did have sleep apnea. I did have the CPAP machine I call the Darth Vader mask. I never got retested for sleep apnea. My husband just is now sleeping in the same room as me, so I guess I'm not roaring like I was, so I stopped using the machine, but I get better sleep. So I would surmise I no longer have sleep apnea because my husband says I don't snore anymore. I feel like I'm getting deeper sleep. I don't feel like I'm waking up constantly through the night now. So I think that rectified itself. I am a business owner, so I do a lot of public speaking. And about 45 days into low carb, this new way of eating, I noticed a significant change in my mental health. So I had anxiety that would sometimes lead to depression. I had lack of self-confidence. So whenever I would have to be front and center in a public forum, whatever that looks like, I would have an actual response. I would sweat. I would nearly pass out. My heart would be racing. It would be super uncomfortable. And it'll be like an outer body experience, just trying not to pass the heck out and just get through it. About 45 days in from switching to low carb, I gave a talk in front of my largest in-person audience. It was about 50, 60 business owners in person. I was cool, calm, and collected. I've never experienced that before in my entire 40 plus years existence on this earth. I had not even one beat of sweat. My heart didn't even skip a beat. I was cool, calm, and collected. I didn't even think about it. And after the presentation, I actually called my dad on the way home because I didn't know what happened. I've never experienced that level of self-confidence before in my entire life. So I would say that's a sign to me that my anxiety is, if not completely gone, it's definitely not as present as it was before. And digestion, I didn't know I had digestive issues until I no longer had digestive issues. I thought just reading a novel on the toilet was normal. I thought going to the bathroom multiple times a day was normal. I thought just being bloated, I thought that was normal because that's what, they're with the plant-based diet, that's what they promote. That's what they mean by satiety is bloatness and just filling up space in your stomach. So I just thought all that was normal until I'm no longer bloated. I feel like I just feel lighter. I just feel just mentally better. And I just feel overall just lighter. I don't know how else to describe it, because you get rid of the bloat, you decrease the inflammation, you decrease the weight, you just feel like you can walk on a cloud.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. It's awesome to hear all those sort of neat things that have happened. What about, and because I always like to ask this, because I think just to be fair, have you noticed any significant or really any negatives since you've gone to this low carb, carnivore-ish style of eating?
The only negative for me in the beginning, like I said, I gained weight, is most people aren't used to eating a lot of fat. So I was very much lean and green. I can count on maybe one, maybe two hands how many times I had red meat or steak or beef. I was always chicken breast, turkey bacon, ground turkey. I would stay away from the red meat, the saturated fat bad. So this was all new to me. And then I'm formally certified and educated in nutrition, and they promote lean and green as well. So I was afraid to eat beef when I first started, a lot of it. So I had a hard time getting my fat up. And I've talked to a lot of people who struggle with that. So in the beginning, I would say that was just the one, if you want to call it a negative, is just the amount of fat you have to eat. Most people aren't used to eating that much fat. So it did take me a long time to start to get into a groove and to start feeling optimal like I feel now. So I think that's just the one negative, is just the transition, and both physically and just just mentally being okay with the amount of beef and red meat that and fat you're about to eat. So that's the only downside, I would think, for me anyway.
Now, you'd mentioned a husband. I don't remember if you said kids or not, but how has the family responded to you going on to this low carb, mostly carnivore diet?
So my husband does not, we don't have kids. We have cats. My husband's my child, but he does not eat the way I eat. And I've never asked him to. I don't even ask my clients to. He just listens to me, and he's learned. So he's made small changes. Like he'll eat half the bun when he gets a cheeseburger instead of the whole thing. So he'll make cuts like that, maybe eating half the fries instead of the whole thing. So he's cut his carbs, but he still eats the ice cream and the chips and stuff like that. So he's made little changes. My mom, she's a nurse, and she used to do the Atkins diet back, I guess, in the 90s when it was big, 80s, 90s. So she's actually going through my low carb program. She's one of my clients because she wants to go low carb again, because she's trying to lose weight and feel better. So my mom is doing it with me. My dad is type 2 diabetes. Out of all of us, he should be the one doing this. Unfortunately, he's not. He wants nothing to do with it. He thinks he's fine. So right now I got my mom, my husband, and my mom and I are still trying to tag team my dad. So I'm hoping we can get him to take another look at it.
Yeah, fair enough. And like I said, you can lead the horse to water. That's the old saying that we have there. And hopefully they'll see you as an example and maybe continue. But like I said, it's tough with family members because they know all of your failings. It's one of those things where it's
probably better than me.
Yeah, exactly. I remember when you were just a snot-nosed kid, you ain't telling me nothing, something like that. As far as you'd said, in the Air Force, obviously, one of the things as a physician in the Air Force, I would be always somebody coming in for a profile. Hey, I can't run. I can't because I've got patella tendonitis, something probably similar to what you had. I wasn't able to run. And so you're constantly giving these people these temporary profiles. They only allow them for however many periods, 6 months or something like that. Or then you have to continually doing that. Do you feel like if you had known about the low carb diet back then, that you would have had a different sort of maybe even Air Force career?
I absolutely, because again, I was a cop and it was very physical, and maybe I wouldn't have needed surgery because I was actually training for one of my PT tests. I was running and my knee just locked up, and my commander at the time is the one who told me to go see an orthopedic surgeon. But I think that injury coupled with other things probably wouldn't have happened, or maybe it wouldn't have been as bad. But yeah, I think that would have made a world of difference. I probably would have stayed in. I actually tried to go back in a couple years ago before I turned 40. And Once you're out for longer than a year, they treat you like a new recruit. They don't care how long you've served. If you're out more than a year, you are new to them. And they wouldn't take me because all my medical records have surgery, all my waivers, all these things in my medical records that even though I can pass a PT test, I've passed every one in my 14 years except for that one, and I'm better, they wouldn't even I couldn't even make it to MEPS. They wouldn't even give me a MEPS date because of my knee. So I couldn't finish my 20 because of my knee. So I think looking back, if I would have been eating this way before, maybe I would have had a better chance of finishing out my military career.
Yeah, they were like, you have a liability and we don't want to bring you in and then have you get hurt again. And then we're on the hook for more disability or something like that. I think that's probably the rationale behind that. But you said that you don't even talk to your clients about a carnivore diet. I assume you're doing some sort of lifestyle health type coaching type stuff. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so I'm certified and educated in nutrition, emotional eating, psychology, and senior nutrition, so 65 plus. So I do work one-on-one coaching with adults age 40 and above. Most of my clients are obese. I work with me, the old me. So obese, diabetes, and emotional eating are the people I work with. So when I work with someone with diabetes specifically, or even obesity, but diabetes, I decrease their carbs, but I never ask them to go as low as me. So I'm less than 20 grams. I never ask them to go zero or as low as me. I start them with what I started my husband doing, just making small cuts. Eat half the bun, eat one piece of bread instead of two, just making small cuts like that, and then gradually decrease from there. And my clients are continuing to decrease their carbs without me even having to ask them because they're feeling better. They're reversing diabetes. So yeah, I never asked them to go as low as me, but on their own, I've had a couple, actually one go lower than me on their own. So yeah, so I do promote low carb, but I don't promote zero carb for them because I know I want this to be sustainable, and I know going zero is not sustainable for the vast majority of people. I'm not even zero, so I can't ask them to do what I'm not doing.
Yeah, fair enough. And emotional eating, there are a lot of people that suffer from, I would just say food addiction as a broad category, but sometimes that is kind of packaged within that. How have you dealt with that? And have you found that by changing actually what you eat, the types of foods you eat has actually had an impact on the tying food to emotion?
Yeah, so I did go to therapy for 4 months, cognitive behavioral therapy. So that was a start. That helped me start to rewire my brain and thinking. So I think everyone can benefit from therapy. I'm a firm believer in that. But yeah, therapy helped. But as far as diet goes, yes, because it definitely helps with cravings because most of it is hormonal. Yes, it is a behavioral, like your coping methods and all that, but a lot of it is hormonal, like your body's natural response to an emotion, even happiness. So your body responds the same. It doesn't distinguish between emotions. So you can't change the way your body responds, but you can change the way you respond. But by eating lower carb, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's 0, 50 or 50 grams of carbs, it does help regulate your hormones. It helps stabilize your blood sugar. So you'll have less of a physiological response to those things. And then, of course, your cognitive functioning, your brain needs fat, and feeding it excess glucose is not doing anyone any good. So I think diet plays a huge role in that outside of behavioral help. So it took me years to work on this, but my husband has ice cream in the freezer. I usually Snickers bars and Klondike ice cream bars. And the old me, again, I didn't have an off switch most of the time. I would crave that because I know it's there and it would take everything in me to not eat it. Now I get ice and see it's in there. I don't even want it. I don't even care that it's there. And I think it's a mixture of therapy. It's a mixture of diet, and it's a mixture of just changing the way you think about things, and it's coming up with a strategy that works for you. So I always just like to say, stop, assess, and take action. So stop is the hardest, and it's literally just to take you out of the irrational, illogical thinking to the rational and logical brain. And it only takes a few seconds, just enough time for you to assess your hunger. Are you emotionally hungry or are you physically hungry? Did it happen suddenly, abruptly? Are you craving specific foods, sugary, salty foods? Do you feel guilt or shame after eating? That's emotional hunger. And then true hunger, physical hunger is true hunger. And then take action, and something like do something that's not food related. For me, it's going for a walk, going to the gym, or whatever it looks like for you. But those are the things I did to help retrain my physical behaviors when it comes to emotional eating. And that's the simple thing that I work with my clients on to give them action steps to do. But that's what I did, and it worked for me.
Yeah, thanks for that. So you'd mentioned you have cats. You don't have kids, but cats. And so are the cats enjoying your new diet? Have you got those cats switched over to a mostly meat diet, or you're not doing a vegan diet for them? Right?
I wish you didn't ask this question. It's so bad. Okay. So we just lost our senior kitty a few months ago. Unfortunately, we had to put him down, but we do have one cat left, and I've thought about transitioning her to her natural diet since I'm doing my natural diet. I do want to transition her. I don't know how she'll do. We're trying to figure out how to do that. But we did decide if we do get other cats, we are going to start them on raw meat because that's what they should be eating. I have not transitioned her yet. We just started talking about that. I have to do research on how the best ways to do that because she's going to rebel and be a pain in the butt like humans would be. But yeah, new cats, yes, 100%. We're going to start them with that, but I'm still trying to decide on our current cat. She's addicted to the food we're giving her. She has a food addiction.
Imagine if you put a little piece of meat out there, the cat would like it, at least in a supplement, and then get her. She may prefer that. I don't know. It's like I said, it's interesting.
She likes yogurt.
Yeah.
She'll go to town on yogurt, but I haven't tried meat because I don't know if cooked meat is good for them. That's why I need to do more research. I know they're carnivore. I know they eat raw food, but I'm not sure about cooked meat. I have no problem letting her lick my plate, but I just don't know if cooked meat is the best. I don't know if you're a pet nutritionist.
I'm not a pet nutritionist, but my dogs are on 100% carnivore diets, and they have been for, gosh, coming up on, they're in their sixth, almost seventh year now. They're a year behind me, so I'm coming on my 8th year, and they do great. They're doing fine. I was doing raw for a while, and the littlest one didn't like it as much. He would just like it. He would just be picking. Then I just cook it. So I just cook it up for them. They get some ground beef, some ground turkey, and that's their food. And then occasionally they'll get a little dried piece of meat as a treat. But that's what they live on, and they've been doing just wonderful with that. I would imagine that probably when it comes to cats, cooked meat is probably superior even to yogurt, I would guess. But yeah. I suspect they'd have a harder time acquiring yogurt in the wild. But anyway, what have been, I think we asked this. Yeah, we asked about the negatives. Have you noted, you mentioned anxiety's better, you mentioned digestion's better, your knee is better. Because you said the reason you went to low carb initially was because of your knee. Is that fair to say? What made you think that going low carb was going to help your knee? Because that's not something most people think about. And I think about it a lot because that's my whole thing. But what made you think, hey, this is going to help my knee as opposed to a vegan diet or a Mediterranean diet or some other version?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. So the way I was eating before wasn't working, and I did get formally trained, and we did talk about inflammation and all that. But it wasn't until I stumbled across Bart K. So I binge watched Bart K's entire channel, and of course I stumbled across Ken Berry. I guess he's the gatekeeper of so everyone finds it. But yeah, and then from there I did stumble across your channel, and I knew you were an orthopedic surgeon. And I believe you talked about this as well, like the inflammation and all that when it comes to your joints and all that. So I was like, at this point, I'm like, what do I have to lose? In 20 or so years, the doctor's saying I'm going to have to get a replacement. Like it's already jacked up. So what's the harm of changing up my diet? So I just figured I'd give it a shot for 30 days. And 7 months later, I'm still doing it. And like I said, I tested my strength just to gauge where I'm at. But I knew anything adding an itis is inflammation. And I do have all the itises in my one knee. But yeah, it was just furthering my education through Bart K, Ken Berry. And then I think when it comes to the orthopedic thing, you really helped put the pieces together when it comes to my knee issues. But yeah, it was just a Hail Mary to see if I can get the inflammation down on my knee. So I don't know if the arthritis or any of that's corrected because it's expensive to get x-rays and MRIs and all that. So I don't know that it's necessarily reversed or corrected, but I do know that it's no longer causing me issues. So if it's still there and it's just dormant, I'm good with that. So I have no idea what the status of any of that is. I just know that it's not bothering me anymore. So switching my diet was like a Hail Mary, just see what happens. And I just did it in 30-day chunks. And now I don't plan to go back because it hasn't felt this good since I was a teenager when I initially injured it. Yeah, it's great that I feel this good in my 40s, better now than I did in my teens, 20s, and 30s when it comes to my physical health, especially my knee.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And the sad thing about that is maybe you wouldn't have needed the full crescent osteotomy. Maybe you would have, like I said, you could have had you could have finished out your 20 in the military and stuff like that. And just because of a dietary change, which we tend to dismiss as no one even thinks about it. Even I can tell you in my former life when I was full speed ahead at practicing as an orthopedic surgeon, I didn't really think much about diet. I would tell people if they were overweight, they need to eat less, basically stuff like that. But I didn't really have any really useful advice for them. And now it's, wow, this is such a powerful tool. So are you still under the care of any kind of physicians or anything like that? Do you have to go to a physician, and are they aware of what you're doing nutrition wise?
I do not. I thought about getting lab work done, but I'm afraid they're going to I don't know where my cholesterol is. And I know if that's elevated, what they're going to say. But I am on YouTube, and I actually had a subscriber email me this morning, actually. I didn't know he lives in my area, but he actually sent me a holistic doctor he goes to who promotes the Mediterranean-like diet and pretty much is low carb himself. So I might actually reach out to him next week and set up an initial appointment and see what he says. But yeah, I haven't gone to a doctor because I know what they're going to say. And I want to avoid that. I did find a doctor who does what I do. So I'm going to give him a shot and see what he says and maybe get some lab work done and see where my levels are and go from there.
That's an interesting and delicate subject there. Do you know in the past, did you ever have labs done that's indicated problems with cholesterol or any other prediabetes or anything like that?
Cholesterol, yes, and high blood pressure. Pre-diabetes, I was never tested for. They did meds, and I kept saying no because I knew that if I changed my lifestyle, like I wanted to try that first. But no one ever talked to me about losing weight, even when I had sleep apnea. But yeah, outside of the blood pressure and the cholesterol, I don't know if I had pre-diabetes. I would venture to guess it was very likely I did. I just was never diagnosed or tested for it. For the amount I ate, for the amount of sugar I ate, and how overweight I was, I would not be surprised if I had pre-diabetes or if I was close to pre-diabetes, but I was never officially diagnosed with it.
The fact that you had sleep apnea, you were quite frankly morbidly obese at 5'200", you would have qualified on BMI, or at least obese. I'd have to see what class level you were. But the fact that no one said, hey, losing weight might be helpful in this situation, which it clearly is. I think that's clearly it is. But as far as, and it is a shame that we don't assess people for diabetes, prediabetes, hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance well ahead of what we do. We wait till they're diabetic and probably waste a decade or two for them. I guess when it comes to, so let me get your impression on this, because people assume, I think incorrectly, what my thought is. But if you're saying, I'm worried about what they're going to say, what do you think they're going to say? And what do you think if you got to predict what your labs are going to be, what do you think your labs are going to be? And what are you actually worried about? And the other thing I guess I should put in there, you said you had hypertension, high blood pressure. Do you not have it now? Have you tested it just to prove that you no longer have it?
I have not tested it. And like my parents, so my dad is super, super unhealthy, unfortunately, but he's on blood pressure meds. He had blood pressure meds since he was a kid. So that I'm not sure if there's a genetic component in that, but I'm afraid, I guess it's denial. If I don't know, I'm good. So for me, I'm just afraid that things are going to come back and I'm going to have to go on meds, because if I've been doing this way of eating for this long and it hasn't corrected itself, maybe I do have to go on meds. So I think it's more so a fear factor on my end and not ready to face if that is the case. I don't think I'm mentally ready to face the case yet, but I don't know if there's a genetic component to that because my dad's on blood pressure. He's on all sorts of stuff. And I don't know, I'm pretty sure there has to be some sort of genetic component in there. So I'm worried about what they're going to say about my blood sugar, of course, mostly, or my blood pressure. And then I'm sure eating this way, my LDL is probably going to be high. I'm not opposed to turning down a statin. I've turned down blood pressure meds when I was younger, so I'm not opposed to not taking stuff. But for me, it's less about the cholesterol, more so about the blood pressure, because my dad's had it since he was a kid. So I'm afraid that I'm going to have to just be on meds the rest of my life. So for me, it's just, let's see how long I can push this off. Not a bad tactic, not advice. I don't tell people to follow that advice, but for me, it's just, it's a little bit of a fear.
So if you can avoid going to the doctor till you're 90 and then you're like, okay, no problem. I'll just for the sake of my own sort of take on this, I think you won't hear me telling people that LDL cholesterol doesn't matter because you're on a low carb diet or a carnivore diet. I never tell people that, but I will tell people is get more information, because the risk that you have is going to vary on across the board, across everything. As you mentioned, some of those things, blood pressure, whether or not you're diabetic and whether or not you're obese, and all these things in addition to potentially your blood lipid results. And so I think that's something just to keep in mind. What was I going to say here? As someone, do you participate in social media at all? I'm guessing you might. A lot of people that have online businesses have a social media account. Do you do that as all?
Unfortunately, yes, I have to. But yeah, I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. I just got on Instagram mostly to promote my YouTube. But yeah, I'm on YouTube. I just started my YouTube channel back in April or May because I was coming at it from like an anger, because I wasted all this money and time and effort getting my certification, my education, and all that stuff, and guiding my clients wrong and guiding myself wrong. And now I'm barely using the nutrition aspect of it. I'm using obviously the biology and the biochemistry and all that, but the nutrition aspect, I'm not really using much of what I spent all this money and time and effort in. So that's primarily why I started my YouTube channel, was to help dispel all the nonsense that people in my field are spewing. No fault to their own. That's what they're taught. But I'm trying to get more people in my industry on board with that. So that was my main purpose for the YouTube. It had nothing to do with my actual business. But yeah, I'm trying to get my industry, like more people, to at least think about the other side and be more open.
Yeah, it's because you mentioned YouTube, and it's interesting, like YouTube is now just, I guess, starting to, there's something about not limiting speech, but limiting reach is the latest social media slogan, that if you promote something that doesn't exactly line up with certain health authorities, CDC, World Health Organization, they're going to limit your reach. And so we've seen people, Dr. Eric Berg being one, who's saying that he is now had his reach severely limited because he promotes a low carb and a ketogenic diet. It's an interesting time we live in. I would say one other comment I'll make is you mentioned worried about a physician and trying to find a physician that would be supportive of what you're doing. As you probably know, Revero is a company that we are just literally in the process of launching in the next probably 2 weeks. All of our physicians all 50 states are set up for exactly that, giving you perhaps a little more nuance and insight and understanding what low carb is about, or keto or carnivore or something along those lines. Your social media you said on Facebook, on now a little bit on Instagram. Have you, if you're talking about, it seems like it's a rebellious act to eat a steak. Like I do it every day, and I get a lot of people saying it looks really good, but I do get a handful of people ask me why, if I'd eat my dog, or would you like to eat your children, or some nutty stuff that they like to do. Are you getting any sort of negativity driven your way because of your shift in dietary preference?
What was the question? Any pushback?
Yeah, I guess the social media.
Yeah, not really, actually. The only pushback I've gotten as far as diet goes is from a couple friends who really didn't understand. But as far as transitioning my clients, like mid working with them, I work with them, a couple of them for 6 months, and then I transitioned to low carb, and now I am changing the way I'm working with them. I didn't even get pushback from them. So the only pushback I've truly gotten were just from a couple friends who didn't understand. And I'm noticing that a lot of people are actually very much passionate, probably more so than they should be, about what other people are eating, is what I'm learning during this experience. So yeah, only a couple friends. Other than that, no, people are just curious. And I've actually gotten a couple people who talked to me about my diet who actually interested in doing it themselves. So I'm actually, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback since switching with both friends, family, and even on social media, with the exception of a select overall. So it's been positive overall.
That's good to hear. And I would say my experience has been generally very positive, but you do always have you've got a minority of people they're not nasty at times, but that's okay. We are unfortunately coming to the end of the time. Nicole, thank you for being here. Appreciate your sharing your story. And it's really cool, particularly as an orthopedic guy, to see yet again. Good luck with your continued business. Hopefully your husband will continue to, maybe he'll come around a little more and that type of stuff. But thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I definitely appreciate it. Thanks so much.
All right, guys, we'll see everybody, I guess, tomorrow. So if not, I'll see you guys on the weekend. Have a good weekend. If not, bye, everybody.